Random Shark. So, if you haven't heard, a YouTuber by the name of Zaptie has recently come back to the platform and started to upload videos again. And by videos, I mean a video, but if you have any knowledge of who he was before, I guess I'll call it a scandal, you'd know that about 3 videos a year is his limit. Regardless though, he's returned to the site, which is a pretty interesting turn of events, since the last time we heard of him, he deleted his videos and Twitter and seemingly moved on to other things. However, he's back now, which is a pretty unexpected development for people who are familiar with his situation, and to me brings with it the question of how should people feel or think about it.
Good thing that never ever happens anymore, where people reboot franchises super quickly when one does kinda poorly. And another good thing is people never come back to YouTube just to split their return video into 2 parts.
So if you're unfamiliar with who exactly Zaptie is, let me give you a bit of background on it. Zaptie was an up-and-coming member of the commentary community back in 2016, a YouTuber that was closely associated with some of the biggest names in the community back then, and even more closely associated with the biggest commentators of today. He'd had a video featured on Pyrocynical's channel, he'd had endorsements from Colossal is Crazy, he was 1/3 of a podcast which featured Bionic Pig and Elvis the Alien, he was very good friends with I'm Alex, he'd even been featured in a video from Leafy is Here.
And even one of them in particular, Zaptie, was actually cool with explaining the slander as well for the video.
Hey everybody, I'm Ed or Zaptie, and I actually attended law school for 2 years. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I know enough about law to know the basics of slander.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is that he was on a direct course to success, as most of those YouTubers were, until February 2017 rolled around. The podcast, which he was a host on, came out with an unexpected episode featuring the 2 other typical hosts, as well as Zaptie's self-appointed best friend, I'm Alex.
And the past 4 months, 5 months even, I'm Alex has been talking to Ed every single day, like constantly every single
pretty
day.
much. Like, I mean, I know more about Ed than anybody will ever know, and obviously you just have to take my word for everything I say.
And I could get into a long, drawn-out discussion about the podcast. I've discussed it in the past, but it's not really the point of this video, so for the sake of brevity, I'll just say, the 3 claimed that Zaptie was a sociopath, that he'd been doing some dickish stuff behind the scenes, and that he was texting and having inappropriate relationships with underage girls. I will clarify a bit more on the last point, however, as how I said it can be kind of misleading, but from what I understand, he had relationships with a lot of girls online, some of them underaged, and allegedly he was trying to get naked pictures from them or had naked pictures of them. The whole thing basically summed up by the very awkward text tweeted out by Deodor Anthony, including the line, "You're worth getting arrested for, Lamau." And again, I could go more into depth about the story, but the point is, Zaptie did some pretty shady stuff which a large chunk of people took umbrage with him over. Of course, many people still defended him, but the backlash was such that Zaptie himself decided he didn't want to stay in that spotlight and essentially bowed out. He privated all of his YouTube videos, deactivated his Twitter, and basically abandoned the persona of Zaptie for about a year and a half. Which leads us to today. Zaptie has uploaded a video on his main channel about Halloween, the series of movies, not the actual holiday, and it's unexpected to say the least. How exactly should a community react to someone like this, who's been ostracized and makes a return? Was his year and a half or whatever long enough penance for him to be accepted back into the flock? It seems for most people, yeah. His new video was quite well received, getting a few dislikes which were more than likely a result of his reputation, but still they were heavily outweighed by the support. For me personally, I was completely ready to say, fuck Zaptie, fuck his entire brand. I thought his monotone ass was boring before any of this even came out, but that's more from a content perspective that I don't personally like his videos. So it's hard for me to judge it in a moral sense of, if I was actually a fan of his, would I be as ecstatic about his return as some of the people in his comments? And that answer is, yeah, probably. Personally, I am a pretty big fan of JonTron. If he were to do something in the same vein, while I would lose a tremendous amount of respect for him as a person, I think I would still want to see him create more content. And I think that's how most people who enjoy Zaptie probably feel about his return. It's an odd phenomenon, however, that talent can overshadow misdeeds for some people. Some people find Zaptie's ability to create content entertaining enough that they can overlook his wrongdoings. Others get hung up on the wrongdoings and it sours their outlook on him. And in this way, I think his return, and the return of anyone who's been accused of or guilty of wrongdoings, is a case of disassociation for people. Can you reasonably disassociate the thing that they did from the enjoyment that they provide you? For example, if Zaptie went out and murdered somebody, and then somehow got away with it and came back to YouTube, there would be less support for him because I think people would have a harder time disassociating him from that act. In fact, there are now people who won't watch JonTron because of a political stance he took in a debate. Personally, I've only seen bits of the debate because I don't really care about his political stance all that much, but there are people whose opinions on JonTron's content change because they can now only associate him with his political opinion, and it's something that ruins the experience for them.
Saying that every angry gamer is trying to be James Rolfe is like saying that every racist gamer is trying to be JonTron.
But that is their option. If it's that big of a deal for them, then they just won't watch his videos. And the same principle applies to Zaptie. Either you'll accept his return, or you won't. Anyways, that's the video, guys. Like it, don't like it, let me know. I made this video because it's an interesting thing to see Zaptie return. It's not that it's something that I didn't think could happen. I just never really thought about Zaptie for like a year, and then I see he's got a new video out, and it just kind of surprised me, and I wanted to discuss it a little bit. And although I don't think I'll personally be watching much of his new stuff, it will be interesting to see if there will be any further ramifications for his actions, and if they will affect his future prospects on this site. It'll also be pretty interesting to see if he rekindles some of the relationships that he had before the scandal. I wonder if the forgiving nature his audience seems to have will be the same one that the commentary community gives him. Shark pride for life, bruh.